Hello and welcome to Juicy Scoop. You guys, my interview guest for today is Lisa Vanderpump. That's right. Kelly and I got to go to her house safely, distance wise. Every precaution was taken, but I got to interview her in her beautiful house. We got to see the swans. We got to see Jiggy, her new dog. Anyway, it's all here on the YouTube channel as well that you guys are going to see. And she gave us a lot of juice, stuff about her life that I didn't know, that you didn't know, that I don't think it's ever been revealed in other interviews. So it was really great. But first, let's just get into some other hot topics and juice that's going on. As you guys know, the Kardashians are ending their reign on E the season after next, which will be ending on their 20th season. And the world is going crazy. I think Hollywood Unlocked or someone said there's rumors that maybe they are not going to stop the Kardashian show, but maybe they will skip E altogether and go to like Apple or Netflix, something streaming, and make a bigger, better, more lucrative deal. I have a better idea for them. Okay. And I think they should do this. Okay. So sorry, Apple and Netflix, who are right now having their lawyers write up paper. But if anybody in the Kardashian camp is listening to this is what they should do. They should do a subscription only thing to their own channel of themselves. The K's. Okay. This is how they could do it. Maybe once a month or something, they put out like an episode or something special. Maybe they all go on a jet and they go to Wyoming and they film the opening of Kanye's church, or they go on a trip together. They could hire and fund a production team themselves, edit it, put it together. And for, a few dollars a month or a few dollars per episode, then all of their 100 million followers on Instagram could watch that. And then they control it, and it's just the stuff they want to film. And if something happens and it is unpleasant or they don't want to film it, then they don't have to. If they want to, that's my prediction. That's what I think they should do, because that's even putting it more in their own hands than even going to like a Netflix or a streaming service. So that's my suggestion. Let's see what happens. Also on my Patreon, I said what would be fun is if they do actually go away because they don't want to feature the kids, that maybe in a few years, like 10 years, there's a new version of the reality show and it's all the little girls. Now they're in their early 20s and they're starting a band. Well, over the weekend, after I said that on Patreon Friday, Kris Jenner posted a video of all the kids like playing little instruments, which is pretty damn cute. And so once again, my predictions have come true. It's honestly, it's just sometimes I just get chills with myself. Let's talk about Real Housewives of New York, you guys. Wow, we finally got some answers of what the venom that Dorinda has had for Tinsley this whole season might be stemming from. And it was pretty amazing. So it starts out the reunion. They are in person. They're all far apart. And Leah starts getting really kind of calling out Ramona for how she spent the last few months in quarantine, that she went to Florida, that she's having fun, that people are dying and she's having fun on her Instagram. And Ramona's just like, what? Leah, I don't have the virus. I don't have the virus. I don't have the virus. And so it starts out where they're still not loving each other, Leah and Ramona. And Dorinda is loving it because Dorinda also doesn't like Ramona at this point. And so she's just like, And then it gets to Andy asking Dorinda, what did we all think of the drinking? When you look back, Leah, you're now sober. You looked at, you were drinking during the show. How do you feel? She talks about that a little. And he goes, and what about you, Dorinda? What do you think about your drink? You know what? I'm not out every night like Ramona. I'm not swapping, spitting, sleeping with men like Ramona. And he's like, okay, but I'm not talking about Ramona's dating. I'm just asking you, like, how do you feel about your drink? Andy, why did you ask Ramona about her drinking? I don't drink every night. I'm home. I'm home with myself. Okay, but we're not I just wanted to ask you, when you look back at your drinking, I don't know if I'm drinking line, but I thought because Ramona's trying to instigate stuff and she's trying. It was the weirdest deflecting of like she moved her obsession from Tinsley to Ramona. And then we start getting into the Tinsley issues. So then Dorinda goes, "Oh, Tinsley, so you're still engaged. Are you pregnant yet?" And Ramona's like, "Dorinda, come on, like, don't say that." Well, that's all she ever talked about. Just wondered if you're pregnant yet, Tinsley. Are you? And she's like, no, I'm not, but I'm, really happy. And so then Andy goes, "So you did leave the show for Scott, essentially." And she was like, "Well, yeah, we were off and on, off and on. He never told me to leave the show, but I knew the only way to really make this relationship work is if we were not living in two cities." Now, granted, it's only an hour and a half flight, but it's still really far, Chicago and New York. And I felt if I'm going to make this work, which I want, I have to be with him full time in Chicago. And he asked the other women, and Ramona's like, "I would leave the show for the right guy." Luann's like, "Oh, in a second, I would leave the show for the right guy." And Dorinda's like, I don't know. He met you on the show. Scott met you on the show, and now you're going to leave the show for Scott? So it's still getting weird. And then the moment happens where Tinsley's like, "We were good friends, Dorinda. And when we were in Miami filming the show, but the cameras were down, we got in a fight that was so bad that even the producers told me that they don't think I should stay in the house because you were so angry at me because Scott had generously given John, your boyfriend, some money, and you did not know about it, and it got revealed in that fight between us, and you were insane." And then they cut to everyone's favorite moment of being a Housewives fan, never before seen footage or unseen footage. And it's Dorinda, which I did a reenactment of it, at the Miami house, screaming on speakerphone. Or maybe not, it wasn't speaker because we weren't hearing John, but she's screaming in the phone and the cameras are capturing it. And she's screaming at John, being like, "Scott's not your friend. You don't run game. You don't run game on me. So you better listen." I thought it's love. "You better love listen to me, okay? And do what I say, John." So I immediately put that up, and I have several theories that it could be this money thing. The simple one is she found out Tinsley may have said it a little snarky. They could have been fighting, and Tinsley had been like, "God, leave me alone. Scott's a great guy. Your boyfriend needed 10 grand and Scott gave it to him. Who dates a guy that doesn't even have 10 grand to pay his rent?" Okay, so it could have been a snarky remark like that. And then Dorinda was like, "I didn't even know that Scott lent you money. I'm so embarrassed that this would go behind my back. You stupid idiot, John. If you needed 10 grand, come to me. Don't let the world know that my boyfriend doesn't have 10 grand or 20 grand or whatever it was. We don't know the amount." That could be one thing that would piss her off, which I agree is would be embarrassing. And especially being a public person and on this rich girl, you really wouldn't want to know that your boyfriend has to go to your other friend's boyfriend to borrow a short-term loan. That could be it. Or it could have been that they did a couple coupon commercials together. Remember, we saw the elevator one, and I think there might have been another one and maybe some social media stuff in which Dorinda and John were both featured promoting Scott's business. And maybe Tinsley said, "Hey, he paid you guys for that," and gave it to John. And maybe John either A, never shared it with Dorinda, never split it with Dorinda, just kept it to himself, which then also may have pissed her off. So it's one of those two things. But the point was, she was really pissed at John because John didn't let her know. If she knew, I don't think she would have acted like that. She would have justified it. No, that was for this. So I think she was blown away when Tinsley finally was fed up with their fighting and went for the little gem that she had in the back of her head and threw it at her. And so, who knows what else, but I think there's more to come out in the reunion because we have 2 more parts left. But what's also really juicy is that a couple of you juicy scoopers realized that you'd seen that scene before of her yelling in this long tunic over pants, the glasses on the head. And it was in the preview for season 11 when Bethany was still on it. And it was this little clip that we never saw in the season. And so they put it in the trailer. At one point, they were going to feature it last season. And then along the way, decided not to. Maybe because they were protecting Dorinda. Maybe because they were protecting Tinsley and Scott. Maybe because the story didn't go that route and they wouldn't be able to justify why this fight happened. It was too hard to show the fight in Miami when all the stuff about Miami was about Sonia and Luann and Barbara. And, there was no conflict between Dorinda and Tinsley at that time that would make sense for this story. So I get it why they did it, but I think that she was quite shocked that came out, Dorinda. So very juicy. And then I guess there was word that Andy said, I would welcome Dorinda back. I think that they wanted her to come back on the reunion and be very apologetic and be sorry about the things that she's done and did and maybe explain where she's coming from. And she's on fire with the deflecting and everything else and being nasty. And, one other thing that Dorinda said to Ramona was about the drinking, being like, you drink all the time. And Ramona goes, I'm very social. You know what? But I drink water. That's why I'm so thin. And she goes, you're not that thin. And Ramona goes, oh, you're awful. Go to church. And I do think that's kind of great because Dorinda is Catholic and she's one of those people that talks about church and rosaries and her mother and really has the meanest, nastiest things to say. And let's face it, Ramona at 63 looks amazing for her, and her figure looks great. So shut up. All right, so that's very juicy. Oh, and there were all these rugs. It was a weird thing because they had to be so separated. So they kind of did this weird throwing rug thing, which I've also seen in real estate shows about staging. It's not flattering. It does not look good. And then someone joked, maybe this was the backup plan in case Ramona pooped on one of the rugs. They had another one. Also, you guys, Jill Zarin makes rugs. Okay, let's talk about this latest Bachelor news, you guys. Colton, who was the virgin bachelor who fell in love with this cute girl, Cassie. They ended up together. Well, as of mid-April, which was the height of the quarantine in LA, they broke up. Cassie has gone to the court asking for a restraining order against Colton because according to her court papers, he has been harassing her with unsettling text messages. He's shown up in the alley of her apartment. He's shown up at her parents' house in Huntington Beach. The weirdest thing he sent these awful text messages. She got these awful text messages, and he said, oh my God, I'm getting those strange anonymous text messages too. I'm a victim of that too. There's a crazy stalker of both of us that's harassing both of us. And then somehow he admitted that he was in fact the person who was sending the text messages to both of them. So almost like a Jussie Smollett, pretending to be a victim, pretending that you have a cyber stalker when really you've created the fake account, that kind of a thing. I thought that was the creepiest. Just really, he put a tracking device, according to Cassie, on her bumper of her car. So that's how he always knew where she was. When she was at her parents' house, he knew that she was at the parents' house. When she was in an apartment, he knew she was there. This is really terrible. I feel really bad for Cassie. Nobody needs this. But also, Colty, we're done. You're never going to be on Dancing with the Stars. Had you just broken up and been normal, I bet he could have come back to Bachelor in Paradise when things get back to normal. I bet he could have even possibly come back, just like Nick Viall, the way they like to recycle some guys. But now we know. It was weird that you were a virgin that long. Myself being a virgin, it's weird. Okay, it was weird. And then you finally got some vagina and you obviously were just so obsessed with her that you're like, this is who it's going to be, which is another reason why guys don't want to be the first to de-virginize a girl over 23. And I guess girls should worry about that too. They just are like, you're it. I've waited this long. You're the one. And they can't see past the fact that maybe it's not meant to be forever. He was also heavy and bullied as a kid. And I think, that really affects you for the rest of your life, unfortunately. The one good thing about people whose kids might be doing Zoom school like I am in that middle school age to, where bullying is the worst. You know what? Is it the worst thing in the world that your kid is missing a year of middle school? Maybe it's not. Because I don't know anyone that is like, you know what? I'm so happy I was bullied in 7th grade because no, you can be successful. You can be strong. You can say, no one needs to be bullied at the most vulnerable part and time of your life. So that's one good thing about not having school. So I'm sorry, Colton, it's over for you. I hope that you can move home to your parents' house and get a job doing something else because you're done. This is just too weird and you're a real turnoff. Now, you guys, I am so excited. Please enjoy a very juicy, fun, hilarious, insightful interview with Lisa Vanderpump. But I'm so excited to have you here, and you have a new podcast, which we're going to get into, that's going to cover a lot of other things called All Things Vanderpump. But I've always wanted to talk to you about your life before the Housewives and all that. But before...
Right, but it's my birthday today, you know that.
No, I don't know this.
Well, isn't this, time out, dropping on the 15th? So yes, it's my birthday today.
Happy birthday.
Yes, and it's a big one, but don't mention it because what I'm going with
is
that this year never happened, right?
Oh yeah, so you're
just delete it. Exactly.
Whenever I'm coming up on a big birthday, I almost prepare myself the whole year. I tell myself I'm already that age.
I know.
So then when it comes, you're like, oh, it's finally here. I can just enjoy the rest of the decade. Because I was
also, when you're married to somebody older than you,
you're always hot.
You're always young to them. And especially as their eyes are going slowly. You know what I mean? Like, there is a God.
I've been married to my husband for 20 years, and the greatest thing happened this weekend. Let me tell you what happened. I went to a pool party with my friend, and the next day I called her, and not a pool party, not all people, just her family and mine. And this one guy came over and with his wife, and he's like, who's that girl out by the pool, meaning me? And she was overhearing her husband talk to him as she was in the bathroom in the guest room. And he's like, oh, that's Noelle's friend from college. And he said, is she single? And he goes, no, she's married. You were talking to the guy in the bar. That's her husband. He goes, oh, so that's his second wife?
Oh, I love that. Now, how much do you have to pay the guy?
Oh, my God. And I go, second wife. And so I tell my 17-year-old son, I come running out to tell Peter, my husband, and my 17-year-old son.
Somebody gave you a
gift. And my
gift.
son goes, I don't get what that means. I go, it means that even though Dad and I are only 5 years apart, there is such a large dichotomy between how hot and young I look and what he looks like that now people think I'm a gold digger.
Like a trophy
Yes,
wife.
I'm a trophy wife.
I'm a trophy.
I'm the Lala.
Well, I have been... Oh my God, she's pregnant. You know that.
I know,
she just
so excited.
It.
I listened
She announced it, with
her
me.
podcast with you.
So
and
bless them, really.
But that's something that is...
Well, I'm actually technically a second wife anyway.
No, I know
even
you
though
are.
he was only married for a couple of years. Yeah, and
But
he was divorced 15 years when I met him.
Yes, so that's what I kind of want to talk to you about, because it's like we only know you, I know you were famous around, well known in Beverly Hills for many years with the restaurants before Housewives, but then Housewives hit, and obviously people knew you internationally, and you haven't been on Housewives for a year and a half, but obviously there's lots of drama this year with some of your old
cohorts.
castmates. And yesterday they just announced that Denise would not be coming back. And do you have any thoughts on when people decide not to come back?
I have a lot of thoughts. I mean, I haven't watched this season. Contrary to what they say that I'm glued to the television, but I really haven't watched it. I've seen a few snippets on Twitter and stuff, and I'm very active on Twitter, and I really like to engage with people following me, because, and they've got a lot to say. I know for me, the experience was really, really difficult, but it was also at a very difficult time in my life.
The last year of you being on it,
Yes, when I left, because my brother had just died, my only sibling, and I was just a mess. I mean, I was. Normally I'm in control of things, but I just felt so emotionally depleted. I didn't have the energy, and I was doing Vanderpump Rules because, of course, that's my show, and it's more of a matriarchal position, and I'm a producer on that show, and we could kind of try to manage, the show, but we started filming the show like the day after my brother's funeral. And so when they were talking about doing Housewives, I was thinking, I just can't do it, because sometimes Housewives, and normally it's every other year for me. Season 2, they came for me. Season 4, they came for me. Season 6. So I knew season 9, I was kind of past my due date for a kind of onslaught, you know.
So you did kind of notice the pattern.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
like the
Where it's
audience
like
would normally react.
Yes.
And after I got the spin-off in season 2, and they kind of like started to come for me, and then and I just wasn't up to it, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay sometimes to say life gets too much, and I think
Right.
it was too much. And I actually, for the first time in my life, I sought help to try and deal with the grief process and to try and see the light at the end of the tunnel, because there wasn't any. And I think at that time I would literally, if there wasn't any milk in the fridge, I would cry. There's no milk in the fridge. I would cry over everything.
Right.
And I think it took a while. It took me a few months to kind of process it, you know, because he was like my real friend growing up. That's how I met Ken. He was
And it was
16
just-
months older than me.
And it was just the two of you.
Yeah.
And so you grew up as a
Yeah.
young girl in London or outside
Yeah,
of
in
London?
London. And, you know, because we used to kind of go away water skiing at the weekend, we used to go water skiing together. And so we didn't have so many friends around us living. We went to separate schools, and we went to school together until we were about 11. And then we went to separate schools. I went to a theatre school. And I was just, very close with him. He lived with us for a while when we first got married. I met Ken through him, and we were just very close. And of course we had our ups and downs, and, you know, we didn't talk for a while and things like that. But ostensibly we were, almost kind of like twins, you know, being 16 months apart.
That is,
And-
that's like the Irish twins, which is what they call it.
and it was very difficult, you know.
And so when you say, so I wanted to ask you a little bit about your life.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we've seen little snippets of acting roles you did do well before Housewives and Vanderpump Rules. And you
Right.
just said you went to a
And I never
theater
did any
school.
porno, even though they've looked for it. If it was there, guys, you would have found it by now. Because most actresses always have some kind of naughty, you know, thing going on that is
Yeah.
always kind of dug up. So, no, you can dig as hard as you want. I've never even done that privately, have you?
No, I have not.
I don't want to see me doing anything, do you?
I've never even sent like a naked picture of myself, I don't think.
Oh, I've got naked pictures that Tom Schwartz found in Ken's dressing room that were for his eyes only, but demure, you know, kind of strategically placed and that. And then he ran around the house with Jax kind of jerking off to them, you know, but we never put that on Vanderpump Rules.
I did a pregnancy photo.
Did you?
My sister had a very artsy neighbor in Palm Springs, and I was pregnant. He goes, "Can I do your pregnancy photos? But I want to do something a little different." So they gave me this like old,
Something different, get your kid off.
I don't know, like gave me this fur, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Okay, do the fur a little lower." And then we get these photos, and my like nips are out, and I have these weird glasses on. And I'm like, this is the weirdest thing. I'm never going to share it. But then recently it made me laugh because it's so ridiculous and how
But
you get
how
talked
did these
into them.
look? Did they look really good at
No,
the time?
I mean, they looked okay.
Or did they look engorged
They
and
looked
gross?
big and the
Right.
stomach was big, but I'm like, but nip was showing, you know? And so I think
Come
I
on,
finally
will you stop being so American. Nobody gives a shit whether your nips are showing in Europe. If somebody's wearing a top in Europe, you actually think, what's wrong with their tits? You know what? The thing is now it's changed a bit, but when we were younger and we had a house in Ibiza, everybody was, I mean, you were well covered up if you were wearing your bikini bottoms. I mean,
Okay, I want to talk about your wild life. Okay, so you're
It
going
wasn't that wild. I got married
What-
at 21.
Okay, so you're pursuing theater and acting in
Yes.
England.
Yes.
And how do you meet Ken?
I met Ken through my brother. I bought my own apartment, condo, when I was really young. So I was really together. I kind of very much believed in strong work ethic. I had a job since I was like 13, you know. And I bought my own apartment, and somebody tried to break into it. They followed me home. So I was having my brother stay with me for security. And then his car had broken down, so I dropped him off at work. He was, as I say, 22. I was 21. And or nearly 21 at the time, and dropped him off at work. He was a DJ in this club that Ken owned. And then I went to dinner with somebody else. I went back to pick him up, and Ken walked in. And of course, I was such a, you know, I wasn't being paid. I was just helping out the door because they're hostess hadn't showed up. And Ken walked in and he said, good evening. And he said, I remember thinking, oh, who's that? Because he knew everybody that worked for him and I wasn't working for him. And I was like, good evening, sir. And he said, oh, okay, who are you? And I said, well, who are you? I didn't know he owned the place, you know. And I said, well, it would be £2 to get in. Can you believe? Now it'd be like £30, you know. And I said to him, it's £2 to get in. And one of the bouncers said, he owns the club, like he owns the Gap, you know.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, well, in that case, you can come in for nothing. And he kind of looked at me like smart ass, and he was kind of around me. And you know when you feel that sudden attraction to somebody? But I had a boyfriend at that time. I was dating somebody in America. So I kind of left and went to see my boyfriend in America. Just didn't see him again for about 3 months. And then I ran into him again with my brother. And he asked me out. And the rest is history. I think within 6 weeks we got engaged.
So he asked you out. And
At first I said no. At first I said no.
Now, why did you say no? Because you just felt like he was too old?
Because, well, the first time he asked me out was at he was 36. I was 21. So, which seems like a real significant age difference.
It's really not, though.
But it's not really. No. I know when you think of it. But he was a grown-up, ostensibly.
But it's like if you were 31 and he was 46, that doesn't seem. But 21 is young, but you were like an old 21 because you'd been working and you had to play.
For sure.
But 15 years is not very much, actually.
Right. No, that's not why I said no. The first time he asked me out was that first night I met him, and he literally kind of went like this, like shook his head, like, come with me. I was like, I looked at him, I don't think so. He said, all right then. He said, what about dinner? I said, well, that sounds like a much better idea, but still no. I was like, you know.
But probably as the owner of the nightclub and being like a 36-year-old guy, he probably didn't have to work very hard, and girls would absolutely be like, okay.
Yeah, he thought, you know, I was obliged to kind of go.
Yes. Yeah.
I was like, not this one. And so then I didn't see him for, as I say, a few months. And then I ran into him again with my brother, and he asked me out, and I said yes, and 6 weeks later we were engaged. He said to me, I will never ask you to marry me. I remember we were in bed, it was like in the morning, and we were crazy in love. We didn't even talk to each other, we didn't even talk to anybody else for those kind of first 6 weeks, you know, that kind of like, you just can't. And he said, I'll never ask you to marry me because I know your ex-boyfriend wanted to get married. And I know you don't want to get married, you know, because I have my own place and everything. I wouldn't move in with him. So I said, well, ask me anyway. I tricked him, really, kind of thing. And he said, will you marry me? And I went, yes, I bloody will. And that was it. So we went out and bought like a pinprick of a diamond. I was so stupid. If only I knew now. I knew then what I knew now.
Why did you do that? Because you wanted to prove, because he was a wealthy older man, you wanted to prove that wasn't what you were about?
I didn't have to prove anything. I just wasn't really interested in that, you know? And he wasn't wealthy. I mean, well, he had a club and he had a nice house in Ibiza, but he wasn't like, you know, I mean, he was successful, but it wasn't... and he was the guy around town, for sure, that banged anything that moved, you know.
Okay.
So it was kind of real surprise to me that he wanted to settle down so quickly with me, you know. And I just didn't want to be another one. I didn't want to be another kind of notch on his bedpost. So when he said, yeah, I want to marry you.
And did your parents or close friends, or brother for that matter, think that it was moving too fast, or they liked him so much they felt confident?
I mean, I'm sure. Really, I mean, with Pandora, I mean, having had a daughter, if like somebody comes along and then 6 weeks later you say you're getting married and he's a bit of a naughty boy, I guess they did, but I was very headstrong. I wasn't going to listen to anybody anyway.
So they knew that it was going to fall on deaf ears or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think we even had that conversation. I was just, we're getting married, just like when I moved out. I'm buying my own place.
Did you get did you have a big wedding?
Oh, yes. The biggest wedding I could muster in 3 months.
Where was it?
It was in, gosh, it sounds like it's a criminal. It's in the United Reformed Church, which sounds like it's for people that come out of prison. It was people that had been married before. So you couldn't technically get married then in a church, a regular church. So it was United Reformed Church. And we got married in Kensington, big wedding. And We had horse and carriages down the streets of Kensington. And then we had our reception in Searcy's, which is literally 20 yards from Harrods.
And did you get married before or after Princess Diana?
After. Yeah, just after.
And was yours a better wedding?
Well, I think mine was a better husband.
Yes, I agree with that. That certainly proved to be true.
My husband loved me.
Yeah.
And there wasn't anybody else in the wings. I remember having the same dress designer not that designed her dress, because she had the Emanuels design her dress, but it was the dress designer that designed mine. Gina Frattini used to make a lot of her clothes, and it was very much a Princess Diana dress, puffy, poofy.
Yes, which was
the
style.
You could have had, a few unwanted guests hiding under your skirt. Nobody would have known,
And you had bridesmaids and
yes,
everything?
I had bridesmaids. I had my cousin, Sally, who's still very close to me, who I adore, and two other young girls that were friends of daughters of friends. And I had two little page boys, my nephews.
Page boys, how cute.
Yeah.
And did you have...
It's very different. A wedding in England is very different to a wedding in America,
Yeah.
I mean, because legally you had to be married in the day. You can't be married in the evening. And you had to be married under, like, a roof, so to speak. So you can't just get married in the garden at night. So there are all these
interesting.
rules. I don't know if it's changed now, but there were rules. So I wanted to get married in church because I'm pretty religious. So it was important to me.
Right.
And we just kind of...
And when you had, did you have a lot of pink in that wedding too? Was that still were you still really into that?
I have a regret about that because I listened to my mother, and if I should never have listened to my mother, because I remember I had these turquoise sashes around the bridesmaids. It was, I don't know, maybe it was fashionable at that time, but now I wish I'd done a big pink frothy thing, so next time I get married it's going to be all pink.
Well, when you did have a vow renewal, I remember, on the show.
Yes.
And
I wore black.
Was it like Valentine's Day or something, or Christmas? I feel like it was.
No, it was, I think it was on our wedding anniversary. It was on our wedding anniversary.
Oh, it wasn't like a...
No, it was on our 30th wedding anniversary.
Yeah. And then the priest that did it was the priest
Father Greg.
From Loyola.
Oh, I love him so much.
And I remember...
Father Greg, if you're listening, I always say, Father Greg, I have sinned. I said, forgive me. And he's just like, of course you have, darling. I love him so much.
And he married Pandora too?
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah. See, Pandora and Jason, they got married on the day before ours. So they got married on the 27th of August and I was on the 28th. So we would have the same wedding anniversary at midnight. So it would become our wedding anniversary at midnight. And there's the night before, so we could always celebrate it together, yeah.
So, okay, so you're married, and how much time do you spend in England, working and being his wife there before you guys come to America?
I didn't have to work at being his wife.
I mean, I know you were always
I did put in
part of the restaurants and all the businesses. So
I was still working as a young actress when I married Ken. I mean, I was on shows like the Kelly Monteith Show, playing his girlfriend. Every Friday night, 9 o'clock, Situation Comedy, when they used to be live,
you had like
live
you were on a full-on sitcom?
Oh yeah, and then I was also on a show for years called Kids, which was a groundbreaking show. I mean, also remember in England they had 3 channels, so you had a captive audience. You had 60 million people living there, and you only had 3 channels. So basically, you could either watch the BBC News or BBC Two News, or you could watch me. You know what I mean? So it was a captive audience.
So that's very interesting. So you already had experienced this fame as an actress in England, in your 20s, which that was something I was never really aware of. I knew you had acted, but I didn't know you were at that level that you'd be like going to get a coffee and I assume you would be recognized.
Well, it was very different then. I think because you didn't have social media. If you didn't watch the show, you were largely unaware of people unless there was an article in the paper. You didn't have this huge presence that you have now, in terms of everything being retweeted and all the paparazzi everywhere and things like that. I was known. I mean, I was known for having venues with Ken, wine bars and restaurants. But I'd also been on a series called Kids for a year when I was 18. So I never went to college. I left drama school to go under contract with London Weekend Television. Nobody knows all this.
I know that
you really are getting a juicy scoop.
because this is the kind of stuff that I always wanted to ask you because I was so curious about the life before the life that we know.
Well,
you know?
I was always very kind of industrious, and I was always, had a lot of kind of tenacity and kind of pounding the pavements and, kind of being out there as a young working actress. And to actually build your own life from that is, I'd have nighttime jobs and as I say, I'd bought my own place with no help. I got nothing from my parents. I didn't get a car. I got a good education, and I got a kick in the ass, about how to kind of live your life with, kind of grace, really. And I mean, I was always naughty with my brother. We were very naughty.
Growing up.
Yeah, we were naughty, cheeky, but my parents were very strict with manners and things like that.
So you mentioned we know Ken was married before, and he has some children from that marriage.
One child.
Oh, just one child.
Yeah.
And
Who was 15 when I married Ken.
Oh, okay. So how was that, being the stepmom to a 15-year-old boy?
It was great. It was really great. I made it my business when I met Ken, and Ken would have Warren with him like 3 days a week. So I made it my business to get on with him, which I really did. And we had a great relationship. I was almost like the segue, between the father and because I was only 5 years older than him. Mm-hmm. So that was great, especially, I mean, then kind of things took a little turn when he ended up hooking up with one of my friends. And
the 15-year-old did?
No, he wasn't 15 at the time. He was 21 then.
So at 21, he
that was on the show a little bit. He ended
so
up
at 21, he hooked up with one of your friends, but your friend was only like, what, 28? So that's not that big of a deal.
She was 16 years older than him. And and I don't want to drag them into my hot mess too much. It was a little bit on Housewives, but she was quite a bit older than him, and they were together for a long time. They had a child together, and they've only recently separated.
Really?
So it kind of took a turn.
And they met through you.
Yes, of course.
But
I don't really want to, as I say, it's not my story to tell.
No.
And I'm always very cognizant of that. It was my choice to kind of immerse ourselves, in the public forum of reality television. But I don't feel that, I can just drag everybody else into my hot mess.
Right. So what year?
Your hot mess.
Yes, exactly. So what year did you guys come out here? Because Pandora, did she go to school here? Or I feel like she still has like a bit of an English accent.
Oh, Pandora's like, she's a bit like a chameleon. When somebody changes, like if she's got American friends, she talks with an American accent. I'm like, why would you do that? Suddenly it's like, hey, hi, I'm Pandora. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're Pandora. It's like totally different. Well, obviously she's married to Jason, who's American.
Yes.
We came out here when Pandora was 2. We came out here. We were very good friends with Roger Taylor, they've just kind of been so much kind of right in the middle of pop culture again, Queen, because, the whole film and everything. And I had lunch with Roger. So we were very good friends with Roger Taylor, the drummer of Queen. And we stayed in his house. We were going on a trip kind of round the world when Pandora's Day was 2. Imagine taking a 2-year-old around the world. Good luck with that.
But for some reason, though, I feel like she was well behaved. Like she seems like she was that little girl, and girls are more like this than boys. But being the only child at that time, I just see her like.
Well, she was very. She was valedictorian at school, and double major at Pepperdine. That would kind of give you an inkling of how focused she is. She knew what she wanted, and she was a full-time job. Mm-hmm. We always had a nanny with the children growing up, of course, because we had nighttime businesses. I wasn't about to kind of, look for a babysitter at the last minute. We always had a nanny, but the children were always very much with us. I mean, we didn't even let her sleep in her own bed or cot. Well, she had a cot next to our bed till she was about 9 months old, and the nanny kept saying, her feet are really hanging outside the bed. We were very obsessive parents, very tactile. We just loved being parents. We really loved being parents. Loved it. Yeah.
So you were going on this tour. You knew Roger.
Yeah. Roger said stay in, Roger and Dominique, he was with Dominique at the time, as you saw in the film, and they said stay in our house. So we stayed there for 6 weeks. And we thought, well, maybe we should come out here and kind of get involved with the acting thing and, give it a try. And we kind of loved it. When you come from England and you come to America, even though I've been to America before, because I dated somebody in America, but you come to LA, it's like this unbelievable playground. And you feel like you're on a holiday every day because of weather and, it's just incredible. So we stayed in the house there for 6 weeks. And then we thought, well, let's live here for a couple of years. So we bought a house here. And then we stayed here. I did a bit of acting here. But, Pandora was young. And then we adopted Max when we were here. So
and
Pandora
I want
was
to talk to you
30,
about that too. So you adopted Max, and did you always want to adopt, or did you try to have a second child and choose to adopt? How did that come about?
Well, we'd had Pandora, and so we moved out here when she was 2 after that trip, bought a house here. And I was kind of, going for auditions and things like that. Ken had adopted a child for his twin sister who couldn't get pregnant. This was many, many, many years ago. And then, of course, as soon as he adopted the child, she got pregnant 3 times after that. So now she has 4 boys.
Oh, his sister did.
Yeah.
Which happens so often.
Yes.
The minute you stop trying.
Yeah. And so I always thought about it. I mean, we really did think about it. I thought we were given a blessed life. And so we kind of thought, we would like to have one, adopt one, have another one, and then adopt another one. That was kind of our plan. Mm-hmm. So Max was placed in foster care and we were registered. And I remember we were in England and they said, well, we've just got a baby boy that's placed in foster care. And we said, we'll take him. We didn't know what, we didn't know anything about him. So we went to see him in his foster home and he was asleep and he was kind of very premature, like 6 weeks premature. And he'd had a lot of eye exams, so his eyes were kind of swollen and stuff. And we were taking him, we didn't really know much. And then we went back to get him a few weeks later because you have to go through all the kind of process of being cleared by, social services and things like that. And then we decided, because then I suddenly thought, oh my God, I've got Pandora and then I've got a son who's adopted, but they look the same as children.
Yeah.
You would never know. He looked just like Ken.
Yeah, he looks, I have a friend who adopted a daughter too, and everyone says she looks so much like you. They don't know that she's adopted.
Yeah.
And it's like sometimes that happens. It just,
Yes.
it's like he's fair, he looks like Pandora.
He looks exactly the same. But then I thought, well, I would like to do sex selection to have another girl so he didn't feel that we had a biological girl and a biological son. And so we tried doing sex selection a couple of times, where they separate the sperm.
Yeah, they spin the
just
sperm.
Inject it, but it didn't work. And we went back to England. And honestly then, Heather, when I had 2, and we were back in the English countryside, we left here after the earthquake. The earthquake
in 94.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we went back to live in the English countryside, bought a beautiful manor house in Gloucestershire. And 2 was then enough, really. And then we tried to adopt again, and social services told us we were too old when I was 35. Can you believe that?
Oh my
in England,
God.
yeah. So
wow.
But 2 was enough, and it was the funniest thing. So we lived in England for about 7 years in the countryside. Pandora went to Cheltenham Ladies College, and Max went to a small private school in the English countryside. And we moved to France after about 6-7 years, to the south of France. And I remember we had these staff live in, because we'd be backwards and forwards to London, because it's like an hour and a half flight. And they said, oh, Max has been so naughty. And they'd lived in for about 4 years by then. Said, Max has been so naughty. And I was used to Max being so naughty. He was just one of those kids who loved to jump on the bed and swing from the lampshades as soon as I left the house, And I'm very close to him, by the way. Absolutely. I mean, he's just amazing. And they said, he's been very naughty. And I said, why? I said, well, he's jumping up and down on the bed saying his adopted is adopted. And we keep saying, Max, go to bed, you're not. And I said, oh, yeah, he is. That's all right. They said, well, we've lived here for 4 years. We've never known. And I thought, that's really weird. We never mentioned it. We never talked about it.
But did you tell Max?
Yeah, I told Max. I took advice from social workers. They said, to grow up before you have the significance of the understanding
Right.
of exactly what it means. So I told him as soon as he said, where did I come from? Which is normally about 3 or 4,
Yeah.
you know, and I used to say, and we have many friends actually that were adopted as adults, you know, they've been adopted when they were children. And I said, well, you know, like Nick, he's adopted, but this one came from the mummy's tummy, and this one the doctor bought. So I said, the doctor bought you. And then, so he grew up with an understanding, and he never really, you know, it wasn't that significant when it's almost like saying the stork brought you at that age. If you
Right.
grow up with that understanding, that's so. I said, yes, he is. And they said, well, how come we've never known this? Or I said, well, I don't know. We never think about it. You know?
Why would it matter?
It just never mattered. And then we started to talk about it a lot more. We talked about it on Housewives as well. When Max was about 18, because then we started to have those conversations. And I was very cognizant of the fact that I never wanted to be the mother that... actually, he was older than 18. I lie. He was about 22, 23, because I think he was 18 when I started Housewives. He, you know, had these questions. I didn't want to be the mother that, you know, that he felt, oh, I don't want my mother to be insulted by thinking she's not my real mother.
Or that you'd be sent, like sometimes the kids feel like it would hurt their adoptive parents' feelings if they did start a relationship with a biological parent as an adult. Yeah.
So he did kind of start to do the genetic tests, and then he had somebody contact him, and they said, we know your birth parents, and he was given access to that situation. And I said, listen, whatever you want to do, I'm not threatened. And now, honestly, I've been an advocate for adoption. If he'd been younger, I probably wouldn't have been so kind of, not generous isn't the word, but as supportive of it. But once he's grown up, what can they do? You know, it's like, I think there's an insecurity when you're an adoptive parent that you think, you know, if they want to go find them in their teens. And Max's teens were not ideal. I had to kick him into touch. I mean, he was really like very happy to smoke pot and tried to get out, you know, of school as much as possible.
Right.
So yeah, I don't think I'd have been quite as supportive of it had he been younger. But he was grown up. He's not going to leave me. He loves me. Even like on our wedding anniversary, the cards he writes, how he tells me he loves me every day, I tell him the same thing. So yeah, I don't think it's really relevant to him. And he backed out. He didn't. He decided. He said, "I
Oh,
decided."
so he never did reach out.
Yeah,
to
he
them.
said, "I've decided I don't want to." And I asked him actually this week. Funny enough, I said to him, Max, you know, did you ever think anything more? Because I haven't heard you talk about it for a year. He said, "I just want to leave it right now." So maybe at some point.
Is he still pursuing music?
Oh, he's such a good guitarist. You know, this is what drives you crazy when you have kids and he has a natural talent. Like, he can pick up a guitar, he likes rhythm and blues and play anything. But no, he's not. I mean, he
because
plays
wasn't that one thing that you guys did find out, that his father was a guitar
there was
player,
some kind
musician?
of music. Yeah. So I think there is something that's passed
Well,
down.
I hope he pursues it.
We didn't get it from Ken, that's for sure.
Because I always try to tell my kids or younger people, whatever, you know.
Are they adopted then?
No, but when my kids are better at other things than I'm good at, you know, and I'm good, and you kind of know what your talent is. And I always tell younger people too, like, not everybody is good at what you're good at.
Yeah.
It's a gift. And if you don't pursue it, that's not really fair to God, because he didn't give that to everybody.
Right, for sure.
So if you kind of know that something comes easier, that you're good, whether it's decorating or cooking or working and knowing how, I could never fix a car in my life. I'm not good at computers. Like, if you're good at that stuff, you should pursue it, because not everybody can do it.
Right.
And, you know.
So Max, did you hear that?
Because he has a natural gift.
He's just a great, I think he's a very generous person. I mean, in the middle of COVID, you know, I've been very strict with my kids. Even though they've had a privileged life, I was always about, no, you know, like Pandy worked her way waiting tables through college. We gave her enough money to pay her rent, to pay her gas and her food. The rest, no, I didn't spoil them growing up. They had very strict guidelines and principles, and it was very important to us. And, you know, like during COVID, I mean, for us, we had to shut all our businesses, which has been devastating, not, just to us, but to all the people that, kind of are there and live there every day, every night, So it's been really, really hard. But Max said, you know what, I'm going to go to Idaho. I'm not going to sit around in my apartment. Now, when I say I haven't spoiled them, I've given Pandora and Jason and Max the deposit for, I surprised them both with doing up a house and an apartment for both of them. But they then have the mortgage that they, have full responsibility for all their bills. And, I remember before Max had his apartment, he couldn't pay the electricity bill. And people criticized me when I said, well, light a candle, take a cold shower. I don't give a damn. If you cannot work, as many hours as I do, and you expect me to pay, no, it's not going to happen. As long as he's got a roof over his head. But work 2 extra shifts a week, and guess what? Then you can pay your electricity bill. So I was always quite tough with them about principles and stuff.
Yeah.
But Max, when we shut down the business for COVID, obviously we wanted to be safe. He said, I'm going to go to Idaho. I've got friends there because he went to school there for a year. He said, I've got friends there and I'm going to get a job. And he worked for the last 5 months with autistic children, just like taking care of them and, bathing them and feeding them and taking them out. So he had That's 2 awesome. And then had 1 on his own. So he did that for 6 months. And I think that I've definitely seen some growth in him. But he's the kind of kid that's never asked me for anything. Not that he had to, but I mean, he's just a giving soul. And I love him very, very much. Even I wish he'd play the fucking guitar.
Well, my boys are biological, but my stepdaughter...
Oh, right.
Raised, so basic, pretty much. And so, and it is special. And when I was pregnant with my second son and I went to go find out, at 4 months or whatever you find out. And I was like, oh, I just know it's a girl because I have one boy and God will give me a girl, like I should have one of each, And then they said, oh, no, it's a boy, And immediately I was like, oh, of course it's a boy. That way my daughter will always be the only girl.
Right.
And it worked out
So you already had a stepdaughter then?
Yes,
right.
that I met, when infant.
Right.
So it all...
Exactly, that's how I felt. Felt that I was...
And I always had like a little bit of a childhood fantasy about being a stepmother. Like I always thought, I think that would be kind of cool.
A wicked one?
What?
Wicked one?
What do you mean kid one?
Wicked stepmother.
Oh, wicked? No. Which was always so funny because then you're reading these stories and stepmothers are always so horrible.
My grandmother's stepmother was wicked to her.
Oh, really?
So, I heard all those stories. Yeah.
But I always thought, I know that I know I would be able to love a stepchild just like my own. I knew that as a kid. So then when it all fell into place, I was like, oh, isn't that interesting that I kind of thought that, like, almost like putting it out there and how your life, I mean, when you think about your childhood and pursuing acting and you went the traditional route, you did the sitcoms, you did this, then you come here and then this show of just being yourself that is way bigger than any sitcom or anything was that kind of a treat. Because I noticed that a lot of, reality stars and housewives, when you go back, did have a little foot in entertainment. And it makes sense because I think there's only certain type of personalities that would be okay with exposing themselves and kind of, being on.
I didn't expose myself. We've talked about that already.
Exposing your life. That's the only
thing I haven't
opening up your life, like, with your kids and stuff. Now it was so early on and it was before social media. Yeah. So I don't think you'd have the concerns that maybe a new person would have coming onto it about exposing their children.
Twitter was just getting started. Facebook was up and running, but I really had no interest in either. And then I started Twitter, I think that was in season 2. Yeah. But it was just... What was the question?
Like, were the kids like excited, on board? They were like, whatever, Mom, you want? Or was it like, we have to have a family discussion? Or because it was so new, you didn't really, like I said, if someone was to do it now, like there's a lot more to consider because it's changed so much in 12 years. And as far as exposing teenagers or kids that are young, and a marriage and all of that.
We did have a conversation, and I have to be honest that somebody had come to me. It was at the time when reality was just being ignited.
Right.
We had the Osbournes, we had a couple of other shows, And I love Sharon, actually. I'm close to Sharon. Adore her. But I remember thinking, that's not for me. You know, it often looked like a kind of train wreck situation or, you know, a lot of volatility to make it interesting. And I think anybody having seen me for 400 episodes realizes that that's not the life I live or want. Mm-hmm. Of course, we've been honest about disagreements and this and different dynamics, but it wasn't something that particularly interested me. I was asked to do a kind of business reality show at Villa Blanca. No. I was asked to audition for Housewives a couple of times. And how they did it was they had this kind of, you'd be part of a group and you'd submit the group. So
like they'd say, who are your friends, Lisa?
Yeah. So these girls came to me and they said, do you want to be in
part
this
of our
group?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think so. Not really my thing, you know. And I had Villa Blanca at the time, and I, you know, ostensibly was the kind of quintessential housewife of Beverly Hills because I had, you know, one of the premium restaurants, Villa Blanca, in Beverly Hills, and I lived in Beverly Park, and you know, I kind of basically was the example of a Beverly Hills housewife.
Right.
So they asked me, and I just thought, I don't really think so. And then somebody else came to me and asked me, not this group, I didn't submit myself to this group. And they said, come on. And then Jennifer Stallone, Sly's wife, actually said, oh my God, you've got to watch this. She said, you've got to watch this. I was lying
So at that time, there was only Orange County in New York,
New
right?
York.
Oh, just New York.
Oh, yeah,
but
no,
Orange County in
first,
New York.
yeah.
And then you guys came. Okay, go on.
Yeah, and she said to me, oh, Lisa, she said, you've got to watch this. She said, you've got to watch this. I remember lying on Sly and her bed, and and she said, watch this show. And we were watching New York Housewives, and they were arguing and everything. And I was like, that is so not me. No, what are you talking about? No, you've got to go for the audition. So I was just like, oh, God. So Robert Kovacic, who's you know very well, news anchor, reporter, journalist, and one of my closest friends, said to me, come on, you're going for the audition. I was like, oh, Robert. And I was very close to him at the time. I said, I'm not sure. So he drove me over to the Valley, which I wasn't sure about that either.
I know, that was so funny. When I told you, you're like, where do you live? When we first met. I know, but I thought it was so funny. You're like, do I need a passport, darling? And I was like, that's hilarious. Okay.
So they drove me over. I'm joking about the Valley because we go to the Valley all the time, except right now it's 10 degrees hotter. And we drove to, near where you live. I think it was...
Calabasas, Woodland Hills.
Yeah. So Evolution. So we drove over there and it took about half an hour to get there. And all the time I'm thinking, Robert, I don't know that this is really the right thing for you. Come on, just go in. So I went in for the audition like this. And I was just like, they made me fill in a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. And they were like asking all these questions. And I just ticked everything off. Like, you know, if it was
like a medical thing where you say
like
no to everything.
And you realize it's yes.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. And I just didn't bother. I was just thinking, oh my God, this is so not me. So I went in and they actually showed a clip of it. I had hardly any makeup on, nothing at all. I mean, I was just kind of brushed my hair and a little bit of makeup on. And they said to me, so tell us about your sex life. I remember thinking, what the fuck, you know, it's English, like, tell us about your sex life. And I remember saying, well, what do you want to know about my sex life with my husband or my sex life with everybody else? And I laughed thinking I'm so funny and who gives a shit, you know? And they were like, yeah. And I was just like, oh no, this is so not for me. And I kind of came out and then they said, oh, we want to come to your house. We want to film you at your house. And I had a spectacular house at the time. In fact, I saw my house, cheeky, on the opening of Schitt's Creek. You know the opening of Schitt's Creek? Yeah. The aerial view. Not the inside, the outside, the aerial view. That's my house, and they never asked me if they could use that footage. That is my house, and it's when I lived there because I see my statue and flowers in the garden. So, by the way, Netflix, you used my house without asking me. We need to talk about that. So I had this spectacular house. They came in and they kind of, you know...
They must have been just drooling.
Me. And I was just like, you know, I didn't take it seriously. I had all the dogs around me and I was just like, yeah. But then something changed. It's like when you think that then they said they might not be doing it. I think because Andy's very honest about that. He says, I was thinking, why do we need to do Beverly Hills? He nearly kind of pulled it. And then he said when he saw my casting tape with me, he said, actually, I'm kind of interested. He said that, which didn't go down too well with the other housewives. He said that in his book and the Huffington Post and on his radio show. Thanks, Andy. That got me in deep shit. So he said he greenlit the show. But initially, when they were holding back on it, it's like when you think that you're going to lose something, even if you don't have it, then you want it.
Right.
So then I wanted to do it. Then I was like, well, hold on a second. This is going to be fun. I want to do it. So then we started it about a few months later. It was quite a delayed process. And I had no idea what I was getting into. And the first time they had that massive fight in New York, the thing with Kyle saying, "You're such a fucking liar, Camille."
Oh, yes.
I was like, I've never seen anything like that. I've never seen behavior like that. I thought I was there, I was going to have a good time. I was, saying all my stupid shit, which I didn't realize everybody had to take so seriously, when they see it. And Ken was just, I remember, the first scene that we shot at the house, and I think we were packing to go away to Vegas, and Ken had his kind of suitcase out, and the cameras were following us, and Ken thought he didn't know what was going on. He wondered if they were just going to be there 24/7, just following us around. So I said, "Oh, what are you doing packing all those underwear?" I said, "Normally you only wear one pair a week," like that. And he looked at me like, of course that's not true, but he was just like, "Oh my God, she just said that on television. Everybody's going to think I wear my underwear a week, And I was just like, oh, who cares? I really didn't care.
Yeah.
I was just saying anything. I didn't care. I had fun. I just pretended they weren't there, and I just kind of quite liked
Went
it.
on
It
with
was
your
funny. Yeah.
personality, yeah.
And then when we went on this trip to New York, and Camille and Kyle fell out over something that was never on camera, and that Camille insisted that Kyle said, and I'd been there. And they got into this huge fight, and she said, "You're such a fucking liar, Camille." And Taylor was going, "I'm going to go Oklahoma on your ass." And I was thinking, what have I done? I was like, I want to get out of here. And I kind of walked to the elevator, and I remember my heart pounding, taking my mic off. And I walked to the elevator, and I was in tears. And I said, "You know what? I know this is probably too late, but I really don't want to do this." This is so, I didn't want to be around that kind of level of animosity and the altercation and the vitriol. It was just, this is not for me at all. And they were like, calm down, calm down, calm down. So I remember crying on the phone to Ken that night, saying, "Oh, it was just so awful." And now that was nothing compared to what I've been through. Because now I've been through a lot worse, and I've been the recipient of it.
Right.
But I think it's something that, starts to kind of, you start to get a little more desensitized, even though I cannot minimize how I felt when I have been the recipient of all of them ganging up together. It's been... So going back to your point about Denise,
going back to
going
Denise about
back
her
to that,
leaving.
which I know you're doing my podcast, so I will
Yes.
tell you.
Ooh, okay,
I will tell you about that on my podcast.
Good, because I feel like I am really sensitive to, as much as I love the shows and everything, I'm very sensitive to what that is like for the cast members. And I think the fans sometimes don't realize, because it's like you might have a friendship issue, not on camera, and that's very difficult. And then to have it on camera, and then to have millions of people also give their opinion on social media about the argument that you're having with your friend.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot. The
one thing I have to say that has got me through 10 years of reality is of course, sometimes you always, 1 in 20, you get some asshole that's just mean for it, and you press on, they've got no followers, or they're just mean for, and a lot of people have very honest opinion, and you look at that. But I have to say, the audience, the viewers, the following have got me through it.
Yes.
When I have thought, I just don't understand this, for the most part, they've stayed with me. Mm-hmm. And I do believe, like with Denise, with what she went through,
right,
which we'll talk about on my podcast
yes,
with you.
We will. Yeah,
but I do believe that the audience stayed with her. And again, I didn't watch it, but I've seen a lot on Twitter, which I'm always tagged in. So, yeah.
All right, well, then let's go. I'll wrap this up, but I'm very
no,
excited
no.
about
I just want to ask
Tell
you
me,
one more
what?
thing.
Yes.
Have they asked you ever to be a housewife?
You were the only one that there was even an inkling because you're so close to Lance Bass.
Yes.
And then Lance Bass and I became friends. Of course, we were at the wedding and you
Yes.
married them. Him and Michael.
I didn't marry them. No, I didn't marry them.
Oh, you were?
I was
were
in the wedding.
Maid of honor?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, you were the maid of honor.
Not so much honor, but I
Okay,
was definitely
you were
the maid.
in it. I
I
remember
walked the
that.
dogs down the.
But I remember one night we all
Mind you,
went.
Lance Bass would be the best housewife, or maybe Michael should be the housewife. And Lance,
Right.
if Lance Bass does it with Michael Turchin, I'll be back there in a heartbeat.
That would be fun. I mean,
Yeah,
definitely,
they
I
are
feel
great,
like
yeah.
there's going to be some shakeups in the next couple of years. But he one time wrote to me out of the blue. I think
Who?
you guys-
Lance?
Lance on a text. I have a feeling you guys must have been having drinks or something. And he said, "Would you ever do Real Housewives?" And I'm like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I'm like, who's asking? And he was like, oh, Lisa asked.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. But, and so then when people always say, have they ever, I go, no, nobody but Lisa has ever approached
Well,
me or
I thought
asked
you
me
would
or
have been great.
anything.
No, I can't believe they never asked you.
if it ever, I never, as people say never, but I really don't. And, but I see, I would not say no to it now because I just think it would be fun, especially if you could go on the trips and stuff. But in doing
Trips are the worst.
They are.
No, you're incarcerated. And often when you get into this kind of altercation, you're on a boat. And unless you want to dive over the side,
yes.
you're stuck. I've been on a boat a couple of times.
you were slapped on a boat.
Yes, I've been strapped on a boat. Come on. What are you talking about? The trips. I would
See,
love
so
to
I
get
don't
out of.
know. You know
it's
what?
so funny because
I'll
when we
just-
were going to... we went to Dubai,
Yeah.
and they kind of asked for all your passports, and off we're going on this trip. And my passport had something like 5 months to run, which didn't even faze me. I was going to renew it in a couple of months, whatever. But when you go into some of these like Saudi countries, or you have to have at least 6 months on your passport.
Right.
So suddenly they were like, oh, Lisa, we're supposed to be going in a few days and you haven't got a passport and you can't go, because they were like, I was like, oh no. Like, I was like, oh no. I didn't even realize that they were all going to be coming for me and gunning for me on this trip if I'd known. So they said, you've got to go to London. They said, you've got to go renew it in person. You've got to literally go there, renew it, turn around and come back. So, I mean, I went there, I had dinner with my brother, literally had it done that next day and then came back, but they didn't even trust me to go there on my own because they knew I'd say, oh, you know what, there's a hold up and
It's
I'm at the back
closed.
of the line.
The
and
office is closed.
I'm in Harrods and the office is closed. Have fun in Dubai. And also they obviously knew that I was going to be the target or the recipient of all of them coming for me, so I had to go. It's like going to a boxing match and one of them kind of saying, oh, I couldn't make it. And so they actually sent a producer with me on the trip,
Little
literally to
babysitter.
sit next to me. They even sit next to me on the plane to make sure that I
But you
get
didn't
lost.
escape.
Yeah, you know it, right? So we'd go on these trips.
Like
but,
that's what they
yeah.
do with like a serial killer or something that they're bringing
Oh,
back on the
I was
plane.
like
The
that.
FBI
It was like
guy.
handcuffed to them, yeah. So, but these trips are normally, you're spending a lot of time together, and that's when obviously things come to fruition. But listen, I don't want to denigrate the whole experience because I had an amazing time on it, and I love working with Evolution, and they produce Vanderpump Rules, and and it gave me so many incredible opportunities. And as I say, for the most part, I hate saying fans because what are people fans of? I don't do any. I live my life, but the followers and the support over the years has been extraordinary. Has really been extraordinary. Just the people, and if I go to a rosé signing, I will not leave until every single person that has stood in that line, even if I'm supposed to leave 2 hours before, I speak to.
And I've heard that because
Yeah.
with people, a big thing is telling on celebrities.
Oh, really? Yeah, for sure.
And that is one of the things I've read. That people
Yeah.
have gone to your signings and that
I stay there all day, every single person. And I think that on Housewives, I've, over 9 years or whatever, they see, obviously, I've been honest with my life and things, and then they see obviously the most devastating thing in my life played out with my brother committing suicide. That was the most devastating thing in my life. But they've seen me talk about so many issues, about our fight against Yulin. Really, they've seen the tears and when we were absolutely devastated by what was going on over there, being such dog lovers. And they've seen me be an advocate and talk about adoption. They've seen me work with Children Burns Unit in the first season, being a spokesperson for GLAAD, LGBT issues, Trevor Project, suicide prevention, never thinking it would touch my life. And I connect with people on those issues. So a lot of people would come to the signing and they'd be great. They want to get a bottle of rosé or whatever, but it wouldn't be about that. That'd be their memento. They're not coming to get a bottle of rosé. They would come and they'd say, oh my God, thank you for what you do for the dogs. I hear more about that than anything. Mm-hmm. Or, my stepfather committed suicide, or, oh, my son was gay. He came out and I didn't know what to do. And I always looked to the way you talked about it. And because one of my nephews is gay, my husband's sister's, one of her 4 boys is gay. And, just wonderful to have such a supportive family.
Yeah.
It's very strange as well, because the way our family was, one of my nephews married an Indian girl, and one of my my cousins married a beautiful black girl. It was never discussed, never ever mentioned the race. And my gay nephew married his husband. It was never. Things weren't an issue in our family. And I think that's the most important gift you can give your children, to raise them without prejudice of any kind. And I'm not, when people say, oh, you shouldn't judge people. Yeah, judge people. I'm all about judging people. If they're an asshole, call them an asshole, judge them as an asshole. But not about, their religion or their sexuality or who they love, or what difference. It doesn't make any difference to me what religion somebody is, or what color somebody is, or who they're sleeping with at night, who they're preferent. I mean, I have more gay men friends. Gay men friends are brilliant because you can be so wildly inappropriate with them and safe. You're not flirting with them. You can kind of I'm very tactile with my gay friends as well. Yeah. And I love that about them.
Yes.
So I've been blessed with that. Blessed with that. Thank God. So, yeah.
Well, I think everyone's going to be blessed because they're going to get to listen to your podcast every week now. I'm excited for people to subscribe, listen, because you are such a wealth of knowledge and you do know so many people. So you're going to have so many interesting, fun guests, myself being one of them.
Well, we're just getting started. Yeah. But yes, I want you. Absolutely. I want to get in deep with the juicy.
Oh, good. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Pleasure.